Back again with another episode on the Coastal Fuse podcast. I'm your host, Braden Plord. Alongside me is Charlie Van Dyke and Arjun Pirani. We're excited to get back into another episode. So we're just going to get the ball rolling with some breaking news. Karl Anthony Towns was traded from the Minnesota Timberwolves to the New York Knicks for Dante DiVincenzo, Julius Randle, and a first round pick. It was a part of a three-team trade. The Knicks are going all in this season, already trading multiple first round picks for Michael Bridges. Now they add Karl Anthony Towns. The Knicks could be a force to reckon with for this upcoming NBA season.
Yeah, as a Knicks fan myself and living in Jersey, there's tons of Knicks fans, and there was an overwhelming amount of question going on because we had all this offseason hype about the Nova Knicks and Dante DiVincenzo gets shipped out. We knew Randall was on the block. Everybody was kind of fine parting ways with him, even though I still believe that Randall is one of the most underrated players in the NBA. So I think overall the trade, it's definitely good if you want to be a championship contender. I really hope Cat is not soft in the Garden because he will get absolutely destroyed if he plays horrible. Because there have been times in Cat's past where he's been a soft player. I'm a little bit worried about the chemistry. I know that the chemistry between Cat and Tibbs is going to be good because Cat used to be coached by Tibbs up in Minnesota. So I'm confident about that. I'm definitely sad that we lost DiVincenzo because he was a really good player for us. He was clutch in the playoffs against the Sixers. He was good against the Pacers. He was an all around good player, but I do know he wasn't happy with the Mikal Bridges trade because that would meant he was the sixth man coming off the bench. And I do hope he thrives in Minnesota and hopefully he gets the starting role.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I'm pretty excited for this Knicks team. I feel, it's kind of a hot take, but I feel like there's never been more hype around the Knicks since Melo was drafted by the Knicks, and I feel like this could actually be a good year for them. I mean, they came off of a strong year last year, and I'm thinking overall this could be finally the year to hang the banner for them. They could do it all. They could go all the way this year. I think. Yes,
Charlie, do
yes.
you?
I see you disagree in Arjun. Yes,
Well,
I think
well,
it's completely reasonable. I think it's completely reasonable to say that they can go all the way. I
well.
mean,
See,
if
I'm a
Cat,
no.
go,
Keep
sure,
going.
go
Keep
ahead.
going. Keep going. No, go
If
ahead, Charlie.
I have family in Minnesota, so I always root for Minnesota sports teams, and so watching Cat, I always see him, complete lack of consistency with him. But I feel if he was, but like he had Nas Reed to back him up, and he had of course Ant Man, the second coming of Jordan to absolutely carry the Timberwolves. But if Cat can level up his yes, the second coming of Jordan, yes, he's
Whoa,
the second
whoa,
coming of
whoa,
Jordan.
whoa, whoa.
Um, but if Cat is able to level up his, amount of consistency for the Knicks, I mean, it's gonna be hard to do it, like you said, within the Garden and a little bit of toxicity within MSG. Uh, but again, a level of consistency for Cat, I think Nick could be a really good team, really forced to reckon with this year.
Charlie speaking
Wow.
straight controversial right now, the second coming of Jordan championship team. Well, I do understand the Michael Jordan comparisons, but I'm not saying that like Anthony Edwards is a bad player, but he's not of Jordan caliber. But the only thing I see is that like their play style is extremely similar with the really good dunks and the mid range shot. That's when I do see the Jordan comparison, but not for like that good of a player.
So, but now tell me, Jordan came into a Bulls team that was relatively awful. Ant Man was coming into a Wolves team, or excuse me, wait, shoot, okay. MJ came to a Bulls team that was relatively terrible. Ant Man came into the Wolves that was also relatively terrible. You have to understand, they're both playing with not a whole lot behind them. Now Ant Man is. Ant Man has his Scottie Pippen type lineup with him right now. He's lost Cat, but he
Whoa,
still has
whoa,
Nas Reed.
whoa.
What? Why are you whoa whoa? What's so whoa
Yep,
whoa?
but Scottie Pippen was so good. There's nobody on the
Yes,
Timberwolves that is.
I don't doubt that Scottie Pippen was. I think Pippen's half the reason why Jordan won any of his championships. But you have to understand. I think that Jordan changed the trajectory of the Bulls completely on its head, and I think Ant Man's doing the same thing to the. I think Ant Man. Shit, I said Bulls. I meant Wolves. Um, MJ changed the trajectory. I can't speak today. Shut up. MJ changed the trajectory of the Bulls completely on its head. Ant-Man's doing the same thing with the Wolves. Okay, I think he's the second coming of Jordan.
Okay, but do you think, besides Anthony Edwards, that there is another Hall of Fame, like, has a chance to get to the Hall of Fame on the Wolves now that Karl Anthony
Guy's
Towns is
gone.
gone?
No,
No, so then how do they have a Scottie Pippen? You think Julius
they don't
Randle?
have. They don't have a Pippen. They don't have a Pippen. I'm saying Ant-Man has a better team surrounding him now than what was. Yes, but I'm saying there is no Scottie Pippen player on the Wolves to help him.
I will say, I feel like a better comparison to that is John Morant, because John Morant, I personally believe, came into a worse situation in Memphis than Ant did in the Timberwolves. So I truly believe that, and I feel like there's more of a Scotty. I'm not saying Jaren Jackson Jr. is his Scotty Pippen, and he's not at all at the same caliber, but I feel like that's a better comparison. But I can see what you mean about Ant being not the next coming of Jordan, but his play style is like Jordan. And hey, there's stories about he may be Jordan's son. Who knows? Really, that's really up in the air. But he has a shoe that's I'm not gonna say as influential as Jordan's shoe, but extremely influential in our generation. I feel so. I can see how that could be.
Well, I'll say that the Sun comparisons are usually being made with Jimmy Butler. You know, with the side by
Mm,
side. It hasn't really been Anthony Edwards. It's really just been Jimmy Butler, and it's just this whole conspiracy theory and all that. But I do see what you mean, and I think the Timberwolves, despite trading away Cat, I think they're still in a really good spot because they got DiVincenzo, who I believe he set the Knicks record for 3 pointers in a season last year. So
yes,
we
he
know
did.
that we know that he can make 3 pointers, and then they also drafted Stephon Castle uh, as a top five pick, and oh gosh, I'm blank.
Rob Dillingham.
Rob Dillingham, yes, I apologize. They also got Rob Dillingham, so they got young guards behind him, so that they have depth. I know they have good defensive players, so I think the Timberwolves are in a really good spot right now. Just having a mix of superstars, young players, and then like some of those juice players, people that bring pop can like swing the momentum, like DiVincenzo did last year for the Knicks. And if we're all done with basketball talk, I'm hoping to
Okay, I'm
move.
still, I'm still, I'm still defending my point of
All right.
Ant-Man's the second
Okay,
coming of
okay.
Jordan. Like you said, his play style is so similar. I don't. Anthony Edwards will change basketball. He won't change it in an influential way. He will just change it because he is just that good. He is just that good. That's all I need to say. I like nothing about like the shoe. The shoe doesn't matter. That's not important. But he is just that good. He will change basketball because he is just that good.
All right. Arjun, do you have anything to say? You look a little.
Nope, I'm all good.
All right.
I'm all good.
Now we're going to move on to what Paul Finnebaum said in his 40 years of covering the SEC, the greatest SEC game he's ever witnessed. Georgia versus Alabama. Alabama jumping out really hot, got off to a huge lead, but Georgia, they're the dogs, and they were really they were coming back. They got it. They had the lead at one point, 34-33, but then a late Ryan Williams touchdown was just a nail in the coffin, put Georgia to sleep. Alabama winning a game. This is a game that really felt like it's something that would happen in either like December or January, but it's happening right now in September. And it was a really great game. Great showing by both teams. Huge plays, especially from Ryan Williams, who I'm pretty sure every time you have to say his name, you have to say he's 17 years old or he was born in 2007. So doesn't that make us feel good about ourselves? We're same age as him, and he's over in the SEC just lighting the world ablaze. But Arjun, what are your thoughts on this game? I know that you were watching Penn State, but I'm sure you've were hearing about this game.
Yeah. So in the stadium, uh, during halftime, they put the scores up, and everybody kind of gasped. And it was at a point where it was 30-7 after Alabama had just gotten a safety from Georgia. And I remember the guy next to me was saying, "Oh, Georgia's dust. Kirby Smart can't figure it out. Alabama still has his number, even though Saban's gone." And I remember I looked at my phone, and it was a Bleacher Report notification, and it said Saban isn't happy, job isn't finished. I guess it was kind of foreshadowing to the rest of the game. They came back, like you said, 34-30. Wait, 34-31.
33, 34, 33.
34-33. And then Ryan Williams had that crazy college football 25 kind of play where he just turned two Georgia defenders around, made them look like they hugged each other in a freeze frame. He he looked like he was playing a video game. And in the final moments when Carson Beck and Georgia were driving down the field, and I think they converted a fourth down, and they threw the ball, and he got intercepted for his third of the day in the end zone. I guess that was just kind of the cherry on top for Bama fans. It was an electric game, even just hearing it on the radio, leaving Penn State. It was crazy. People were screaming. It was electric, honestly.
I think Georgia for a long time has kind of been they've been the best team in college football for since when they beat Alabama in the national championship a couple years ago. And I think this is finally, the end of the true end of the Georgia dynasty. I think it began with the SEC championship last year with Georgia versus Alabama, and I think this is another instance of Alabama beating Georgia. I think Carson Beck. I think, of course, he's obviously a great quarterback. You can't be throwing 3 interceptions in a game and expect to beat any team, really. I feel like, much less Alabama. While Georgia, they clearly had a strong offense and they clearly didn't give up. A lot of respect to them. They were down 21-0 coming out of the first period. But it's kind of like they didn't give up, and a lot of credit to them. But still, overall poor showing. I feel like from Georgia just as a total. Hopefully, as a wake up call, I feel like after that Kentucky game a couple weeks ago, we could kind of see the writing on the wall of this is the end of the Georgia team that we once knew. But I think Alabama, I think it's going to be Texas Alabama in the national championship game after this showing from Alabama.
And I will say, Alabama did a great job hiring Kalen DeBoer as Nick Saban's successor. And I saw a stat, and he's 30-3 in the past 3 seasons in total from Washington and Alabama against ranked opponents. And of those teams, there are notable coaches' names like Dan Lanning and now Kirby Smart and Steve Sarkisian, right? And these are and Lincoln Riley. There's notable names here that he's taken down as some of the best coaches in college football, if you were to say that, right? So I do think that there was a lot of speculation that Alabama won't be able to recruit anymore, and they still had Ryan Williams. He could have decommitted after Saban retired, but no, he stuck it through. Jalen Milroe didn't transfer. A lot of guys transferred, sure, but the ones that really made an impact in Saturday's games didn't transfer and they stayed true. And I think that shows to Kalen DeBoer's character.
Yeah, I think it's also a real testament about the young talent that Alabama brings in. That it's not just someone that is going to harbor on the bench for 2 or 3 years before they get any playing action. They're recruiting guys fresh out of high school and they're making plays like immediately. We see Ryan Williams. He recommits to a different class. He comes up and he's probably one of the youngest freshmen in the nation, and he's out here making plays. And it's not just like he's sitting on the bench, just with a hype train around him. And on the other side of the ball, I can't remember his name, but the man who had the game sealing interception, that's also another freshman too, getting true playing time, coming down to the last second. It's just amazing to see all these freshmen that Alabama is getting that are making big plays and big moments and just aren't shying away from it. And I know that they had a situation kind of like this last year with Caleb Downs. He was an electric player as a freshman. He was one of the best safeties in the entire nation. So I just think that even with Nick Saban leaving, Kalen DeBauer has done an excellent job recruiting, getting guys that want to stick to Alabama even after Saban's gone and he left a big shoes to fill. I think DeBauer's doing a great job filling them in his own way and finding a lot of young talent.
Yeah.
Uh, just quick note for you, Braden. I think it was Xavier Brown that had that game sealing interception.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. And so I know, Charlie, you're talking about Kentucky earlier, and boy, that was a great game. It might not have been high scoring, but Kentucky upsets number 6 ranked Ole Miss Ole Miss surely to fall down the rankings. I'm not sure if the AP poll has come out yet,
Mhm.
but we know that Kentucky is a real team. We got a little bit we got a little taste with Georgia. They lost 13-10. It was controversial pick six call that didn't go their way. But this Kentucky team, it's been really underrated. I mean, I feel like they've just been doing really good. They've produced some nice NFL talent. Will Levis, he went in the second round. Ray Davis, the running back on the Bills, he's making a nice little impact. So this Kentucky team, it's not really someone you can overlook now because they've done really well against some top 10, top 5 teams in Ole Miss and in Georgia.
Yeah, honestly. I do think personally that Ole Miss, Braden, the AP poll has come out. They're 12th now. Didn't uh sorry, let me rephrase this. Kentucky didn't win against Ole Miss. Ole Miss lost to Kentucky because honestly, all the stats are relatively the same. They went into half tied. Um, Ole Miss, matter of fact. Oh wait, no, they didn't go into half tied. Kentucky, I think, to was up 10-7 at half, and then Ole Miss came out of the gates in the third quarter and outscored them 10-3. But I do think the final touchdown with 2 minutes to go by Kentucky is the reason they won the game. All the Jackson Dart and Vandegrift had basically identical games, I think, with just 8 yards. Let me double check that. 8 yards. Yeah, around 8 or 10 yards in between each other passing yards. The running back from Kentucky, uh, he didn't really have a great game. I think he had 11 carries for 50 yards, which was is pretty abysmal. Key, Kentucky's wide receiver, and Harris, Ole Miss's wide receivers, both had a touchdown. They both had, I think, or over 8 receptions. So I do think it was just a pretty even game, but Kentucky just squeaked it out. I wouldn't say Ole Miss. Ole Miss didn't look great this game, and Ole Miss they didn't cover the spread. They didn't win by as much as they were supposed to. But I do think that Kentucky is not as good as people are saying.
So wait, Arjun, I just want to make sure I'm understanding. You're saying that Kentucky is overhyped, especially after winning this Ole Miss game.
Oh, 100%. I'm going to stay true to that.
I do see your point. I think that's a valid take to make. But at the same time, I also think that's kind of absurd. I think that this Kentucky team, I feel like Kentucky, they're not at Vanderbilt level of bad in the SEC, but I feel like they've never been the star-studded team to look at for football in the SEC. If you want a team for basketball, you go look at Kentucky. But uh, I think that this Kentucky team is actually not necessarily a force to be reckoned with, but at least a quality team that you should look to for quality games. Um, I mean, I'm thinking that again, you hold Georgia to 13 points, I believe, and then you beat number 6 Ole Miss. Jackson Dart is an excellent quarterback for the Ole Miss. And I don't think that there's any real reason to say that Ole Miss wasn't a great team this game. I don't think that they played their best game, but I don't think that this was necessarily a trash game that this would never happen again. I see this kind of game happening again in the future for Ole Miss against any team. And so I think Kentucky, I think this is actually a relatively good Kentucky team. I've said in the past, this year's before, but no, they're probably not going to go win a national championship anytime soon. But I think you're giving not nearly enough credit that the Wildcats deserve. This is a good team. This is a good team. You can't, Georgia, yeah, they lost to Alabama this week. Who cares? They're still going to be a good team. Georgia's a great team year in, year out. There's no debating that. And so I think that with this win, I think Kentucky, they frankly deserve to be at least within the top. I think Kentucky deserves to be within the top 25, in the 25 to 20 range. But I think this is just overall a good Kentucky team. I don't think they're overhyped. I think this is a completely reasonable statement to say that this Kentucky team is good.
Yeah, Arjun, I really liked how you touched on how Ole Miss had a bad game. I'm not saying that it wasn't really completely an Ole Miss loss compared to a Kentucky win. Like when Kentucky, they get in these big games against big time schools like Georgia or Ole Miss, they're showing up, they're doing well. They're not crapping the bed or doing anything bad. But I do want to point out, I don't have the exact stats, but I think in this Kentucky game, Jackson Dart gave Harris the ball. I think he had 12 receptions. I think the next closest receiver had either like 3 or 4 receptions. So it was You knew the ball. I believe it was Trey Harris. Is that his name?
Yeah.
Yeah.
11 receptions for 176 yards and a touchdown. That was his stats line.
Yeah, and Charlie, if you're looking at the stats right now, the next closest receiver had like what, 3 or 4 receptions?
The next is Henry Parrish Jr. with 3 receptions for 18 yards.
Yeah, and Henry Parrish, that's the Ole Miss running back. So those are usually going to be checkdowns. So as Kentucky, if Jackson Dart is going to be targeting one man, which he pretty much did the entire game, they still didn't really find a way to stop Trey Harris. But I didn't like how Jackson Dart wasn't spreading the ball out a little bit more. But that's something you want to see with elite quarterbacks or just Heisman type contenders, that Jackson Dart has been assumed that he can do, just to spread the ball out to more playmakers rather than just concentrating on one guy. And Kentucky, while they may not be like the program that you're going to lose sleep over, they have been, like I said earlier, they've been producing pretty good NFL talent. We saw Ray Davis, Will Levis. I forgot about Wandale Robinson this past game against the Cowboys. He's been an excellent slot receiver to start the season. He's just eating up receptions, eating up yards, giving a good option for Daniel Jones to look to. So I think that, like you said, Charlie, this Kentucky team can be pretty good, and I do think that they should be ranked. Next up, I want to move on to the Miami Hurricanes. It was a Friday game, and squeaking past Virginia Tech, 38-34, I believe was the final score, but another controversial last play. Virginia Tech throws up a Hail Mary back of the end zone. A Virginia Tech player catches it. It's ruled on the field a touchdown, but it is overturned. And on social media, there's been a lot of I guess disagreement on the officials' call, just because there wasn't indisputable evidence turning it over. Because we see that it's just a sea of bodies, arms are flying everywhere, you can't really find the ball, but he hits the ground, and then about like a second and a half later, you see the ball pop out. So it was a little bit of a controversial way to end the game, but Cam Ward had a really good game.
Yeah, I will say this was definitely a good showing for Cam Ward, to help his Heisman race. I do think that the final call, the officials did get it wrong. I was making a joke in the car with my dad saying that the refs had Miami money line, um, and that they really needed them to win. But obviously, hopefully, that isn't true. But I do. This is actually a point that's not related to the game. That I do think refs should be, I'm not gonna say deducted their salary, but they should get penalized for wrong calls that they have made over replay evidence. Like one call that comes up straight to mind was the Jadeveon Clowney versus Michigan, where they spot the ball and it's obvious that he's short, and they gave him the first down. Like to me, I think that's just blasphemy. I don't care if you're a South Carolina or a Michigan fan. That's just not fair. That's not how football is played. So I do think that refs should be investigated over that and maybe penalized like they do in the NBA. But overall, I do think that Virginia Tech and Brent Pry and his team were definitely robbed of a win in Miami. Um, do I think the officials got it wrong? Yes. Do I think that they should have called it a touchdown? Yes. Do I think they should be investigated over the call? Yes.
Uh, I don't know how to respond to that. Arjun, I don't think you can. You've clearly had some bad experiences with refs in the past, because
Yes,
I
I
don't think
have.
there's like, you can't just say like, oh well, yeah, refs they should go get investigated. That's then it's not really something that you can like. You can't just make that claim without like really like looking through. I feel like a lot more evidence than just one game. Yes, refs don't make perfect calls, and we probably should move to robot refs at this point because they're not going to make mistakes like this. But in reality, this is a subjective call. Like Braden was talking about at the end of the game, the replay evidence is not very indisputable. It's very hard to tell. It's murky. Anyone who watches the Premier League know that VAR is arguably the best and the worst invention to ever come. Those who don't know, virtual assistant referee. It's just their replay system. They call it VAR. But I think Premier League teams, they had an option. They took a vote this past summer to get rid of VAR, and they didn't, because overall they think it's a good thing. So I think probably instituting robot refing will be a good thing. But I don't think over this one call or over really any amount of calls you can really call into question a ref's decision making. I think all refs make in-game decisions, and some of them are imperfect. You can argue whether this was a robbed win of Virginia Tech or a good call for the Hurricanes. It doesn't matter either way. Miami got the victory, and there's nothing that's really going to change that. What I will say is that Cam Ward, yes, I want to touch back upon this. Looking at stats, he had all 5 of Miami touchdowns. He threw for 4 of them. He ran one in. I will say he did fumble the ball once and throw 2 interceptions. Overall, I think Cam Ward is honestly at least top 5 contender for the Heisman Trophy. I think at this point he's top 3. And I think overall Hurricanes, they're having a great season so far. And Virginia Tech's not that good at football. The only interesting part is the fact that they got what's it called, Enter Sandman, to open up their games. That's the toughest intro in college football. That's all.
Quite possibly the best running back in the nation, which I really believe it is, Ashton Jeanty from Boise State. The only good players I can think of coming from Boise State, Derek Carr, Devontae Adams, but he had a day on Saturday, going over 250 yards, averaged 10 yards a carry on 26 carries with 4 touchdowns. He's just an insane player. We haven't seen someone being able to run the ball and just put up these types of numbers in Division I FBS football for a while now, and he's pretty much just a shoo-in for the best running back award right now. It's just awesome to see what he's been able to do this season.
Yeah, I truly believe that Ashton Jeanty is probably one of the most fun players to watch in college football, along with Travis Hunter and Ryan Williams and Jeremiah Smith. I do think that they are the most fun players to watch in college football. And I will say that Ashton Jeanty, I forget who the last running back was to win the Heisman. I'm not sure if Derrick Henry won it or not.
But I know that Mark Ingram, he won it.
Yeah, Mark Ingram.
But that was, I'm not sure.
That was 2007, I think.
No, and then Reggie Bush won it wasn't Reggie Bush 2008?
No, I know Mark Ingram was like after that. He was like 2011, 2012.
Oh, he was 2011.
I think you said Mark Ingram was 2007.
No, he was 2011 because he was with AJ McCarron.
Okay.
Yeah. Back to my point. Ashton Jeanty, I do think is probably top 3 in Heisman voting right now.
Oh wait, my bad. Sorry. I was gonna say CMC. It was like, oh no, he didn't win it. There was a dude. If you remember the interview he was giving at the Rose Bowl.
Yep.
Heisman, better than Barry.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. Keep going.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. But I do think he's top 3 in Heisman with Travis Hunter and with the likes of Travis Hunter and other people like that. And Cam Ward. But I do believe that if Ashton Jeanty went to a powerhouse school other than Boise State, he would get a lot more recognition, which I feel like is just kind of obvious. But I feel like a lot of people are kind of just looking that over. Like if he went to a USC or a Ohio State or a Alabama, I feel like he would get a lot more national recognition, because if you talk to a casual, so to say, about college football right now, they probably will know who Ashton Jeanty is, but they probably won't know the magnitude of what he's doing and how it's kind of flying under the radar for casuals.
All I can say is I knew it was going to happen. When College Football 25 first came out, I got randomly played with Boise State. I had to play Tyler Lombardi, the man, the myth, the legend. I ran Ashton Jeanty to the moon. Basically only play I ran was inside zone. Tyler almost broke the controller. He was very mad. All I can say is that, yes, I do like your point. I think he probably went to Boise State to get more playing time, even because, it's impossible to get playing time, equal or consistent playing time anywhere in college football. But I think he's, a great running back. And I think that I don't think a Heisman is necessarily it. Again, Washington State, it's only Washington State. Like, yeah, they're cool and everything, but I don't think Washington State is really the team to beat. And then I don't think he's a Heisman necessarily, but I do like your point of how if he was at like a bigger school, he'd get more recognition.
The point that I want to touch on is, I do have a lot of respect for Ashton Jeanty. Going to a little bit of a smaller school doesn't get as much national recognition, Boise State does. I'm not sure what his reason was, whether that it could be NIL, could be the playing time like you touched on, but nevertheless, it's not a Power 5, Power 4
Soon to
school.
be is. Soon to be is.
Soon to be. But
Soon to be.
like you were just saying that yeah, it's not impressive. Washington State, they not really a great football team, but we remember I think early on a couple weeks ago against Oregon, a eighth ranked. I don't know what their ranking is right now, but they're they're
They're sixth.
they're sixth in the nation. Okay,
Okay.
yeah, but Oregon is a top six team in the nation right now, and he still had I think it was like over 200 yards and like 4 or 5 touchdowns. So he's not just doing this against regular teams that aren't maybe that like championship contending for, but Oregon is a team that is vying for college football playoff spot and a championship with a really great team, and they've gotten a ton of transfers. They're slinging money left and right. They're getting transfers. Evan Stewart. They're getting players from all over the country to come to Oregon, and they had Ashton Jeanty, an amazing player from Boise State, run all over that defense, and he had a really great showing, really great performance, and he should be a lock in to win best running back currently. Now I want to talk about Florida State. Another loss against SMU. I believe it might have been their first ACC game, which congratulations to them. First time in a new conference, took a pretty big leap, and they did well. But Florida State, this is the worst possible start you could have even thought of, because there's the ceiling, and then there's the floor. Right now, Florida State's in the basement. Honestly, they've just won. They're 1-4 right now. Their one win, I believe, was against a I can't think of the team right now, but I don't think it was a really Power 4, Power 5 team. But you're beginning to kind of think that going from a top 10 team all the way to outside the top 25, all the way to three wins below 500 at this point. Do you guys think that? Well, first, before I get to that, I just want to say, what do you guys think has been the big recipe for like why Florida State isn't having all the success that they had last season?
Personally, I think it's a lack of chemistry with all the new guys. I feel like that's the number one recipe to not having success. It's the chemistry wins you football games, especially if you're Florida State and historically you're notorious for being good. In the past year, you definitely showed that. And they did lose a lot of talent like Jordan Travis and Keon Coleman to the NFL. So there are a bunch of new people that need to show up. DJ Uyangalele was a transfer. I just butchered that name so hard. I feel so bad, DJ, if you're watching this. Put the fries in the bag. But I do think that the lack of chemistry led to Florida State being 1-4. I think they are right now, and it's not looking good for Mike Norvell either.
To your point again, DJ. Hold up, wait. Uagalele.
Uyangalele.
There's no N.
That's how all the announcers say it. They say DJ Uyangalele.
But there's no N. Okay. Uangalele. I'm dyslexic. This isn't fair. I get a pass, okay?
Uyangalele.
Uyangalele.
This is gonna make it very real.
This cannot be half the podcast. It's trying to pronounce his last name. DJ. We know who we're talking about. I think this entire season, I think he's only had 4 passing touchdowns. Is what the stats are saying, and I think that the complete lack of air game is kind of like taking them down to a notch where they should not be. Florida State, through the past couple of, through the 2010s, they were a relatively solid team. They were always a force to be reckoned with. But I think that, after the highs of last year, maybe there's a lot of expectations coming into this year surrounding them. Maybe it's the pressure that's getting them. Maybe it's you're right. Maybe it's the amount of team chemistry. I don't think anywhere you can really point to one big issue. I feel like if there was one place we could point, it would be relatively obvious. It would be in the news about maybe a player or a coach I think it's just a lot of little things that the players maybe are or aren't doing that's leading to the failure of this FSU team.
So now the point that I kind of was a little quick to get, do you guys think that where do you think this FSU fall off ranks in college football history or maybe even sport history if you're daring to do so?
Um, Personally, I think that the worst fall off that I have experienced in college football history was 2020 LSU. They lost all of this talent. And I know it was considered a COVID year and all of that, but they went 5-5. They went from undefeated to 5-5. Now, another team you can look to is over the last couple of years, TCU was in the national
Oh,
championship and they got absolutely embarrassed. And then the next game they played was against Travis Hunter in Colorado, and then they also got embarrassed on national television. Right? I'm not gonna say it's a primetime game, but it was a ESPN main network game. I remember this very clearly. But I do think the number one fall off is 2020 LSU. They lost all of their good players, and I forget what quarterback they went on to, but they lost their starting running back, tight end, two wide receivers because Jamar Chase sat out the year, Joe Burrow. They lost their offensive lineman. They lost their defensive end. They lost their safety, and they lost Derek Stingley Jr., their cornerback. So you can do the math there. I counted out 8 key positions where starters left. So I think that's the worst fall off in college football.
Um, I honestly think there isn't really a whole lot of worse. I think this could be the worst natural fall off of all time. I think the worst fall off of all time is SMU with the death penalty. Yeah, I think this. I think. I know, Arjun. I see your eyes, widening a little bit. I
Wow.
think the SMU winning a national championship and then getting hit with a death penalty and then just simply not having a program. I think that could be arguably the only worst fall off in this FSU program. Clemson had a rough fall off. LSU had a rough fall off. Um, who was the other team you just mentioned? Wait,
TCU.
TCU. TCU had a rough fall off. I think that at this rate, Florida State, they still have to play Clemson, Miami, and Notre Dame. Not to mention a okay Duke team. I think they could theoretically get out of the season at max maybe 4 wins. I think, and that's honestly being generous because the only teams that they could beat from now on are Duke, North Carolina, and Charleston Southern. Um, and I really hope that they beat Charleston Southern. Like, it's pretty impressive if they did it, to be honest. Like that'd be quite the fall off. I'm only saying SMU is the worst fall off because SMU simply didn't have a program. FSU is playing like they don't have a program. Like this is the collection of baseball students and law students that lost 200-22 to Georgia Tech that we mentioned last week. What school is that called?
it was Cumberland College.
They're playing like Cumberland College right now. This is their only win is against Cal. And I'm gonna give a little bit of credit to Cal. They beat Auburn, but Auburn also just lost to Oklahoma. I think this is an incredible fall for an FSU team. I think this is again the only fall off worse than this is SMU, who they just lost to. So
I
pretty
do
rough.
think that FSU fall off is pretty bad, but I do want to go back to the TCU because I do think that was pretty rough fall off because it was a similar situation to what LSU had in 2020, like Arjun was mentioning. You lost your starting quarterback, running back, your top two receivers. You lost your lineman. You lost the best safety in the nation at that point. It was LaDainian Tomlinson's nephew.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so like they lost him too. They lost one of their best linebacker, D. Winters. They lost Darius Davis, Quentin Johnston. They lost their quarterback. I mean, it was just a terrible fall off. They were ranked 18th in the nation. They get beat by Colorado, and then ever since they haven't. I'm not sure they've even scathed the top 25. So just seeing that a team that was not expected at all to be in the national championship, and they just got embarrassed. And ever since Georgia put a 73 stamp on their forehead, they've been hiding in the corner, just wallowing away. And I just think that that's probably one of the biggest fall offs, at least in my opinion. Next, I want to move on to the NFL. There's a flurry of games today, so we're just gonna breeze over a couple of them. We saw that the Vikings went off to a really really fast start against the Packers, but it was a similar excuse me, a similar oh, I can't talk either.
Now who can't
It,
talk?
it was it
Yeah.
was
Uh huh.
it was a similar situation that Georgia and Alabama had. Alabama got off to a hard start like the Vikings. Then Georgia, like the Packers, had a really good comeback that got down to the wire, but ultimately, in the end, it was not enough. The Vikings escaped them. Sam Darnold leads the league in touchdown passes right now. I mean, you want to talk about like a Terry Bradshaw, a late bloomer. I mean, we see number one overall pick was immediately called a bust, hopping around different teams, back up on the Niners, comes to Minnesota. He thought that JJ McCarthy is going to be the successor immediately, and now he's performing like this. It's a harder decision for the Vikings organization to make. Sam Darnold, I mean, he's just been that dude this season. It's been great to see.
Yeah. I do think it was a good game. I do think Jordan Love's 3 picks definitely did not help the Packers. And I think this is his first game back, if I'm not mistaken, since when he
Yes, it
got injured
is.
in Sao Paulo. But I do think Sam Darnold had 3 touchdowns in the first half, which was very good, but then he kind of lost steam. But I will say, what I was very surprised about was Dontavian Wicks of the Packers. He caught 2 touchdown passes in the fourth quarter, which were probably the 2 most important catches of his life, of his career, and they were in the fourth quarter. And if the Packers had come back, he would probably be the MVP of the game.
Um, Vikings had a chance to put the Packers away. They simply did not. They were up basically 28 to nothing at one point, and as any Minnesota fans will know, a 28 to nothing lead is actually a much closer lead than you think it is. Um, um, I remember I came home, Green Bay, they scored another touchdown. I was thinking, yeah, no, this is exactly how the Vikings lose this game. They get the ball back, they run three and out, and I'm pretty sure they let the Packers score again. Jordan Love, I want to make a point. You said Jordan Love, he threw, what was it, 3 picks today or something like
Yeah,
that.
sorry.
The Packers, they also had a fumble within they had a fumble in the fourth quarter. I think they had like overall like 4 or 5 turnovers this entire game. It honestly, to a point, it didn't affect them that much because the Vikings would get it and then would just give the ball right back by like just doing horrendous offense. For some reason, I don't know if it was the Green Bay defense taking a nap or Sam in the first half, or Sam Darnold was like, we won the game. I'm sure we're gonna be fine. But something clearly happened where Kevin O'Connell would refuse to run the ball when all he would do was pass. They, for some reason, couldn't catch a pass, or Sam Darnold couldn't make a good throw within the fourth quarter, and then they had to go three and outs or get just one first down and then give it right back to the Packers. Like they within the second half, they scored 3 points. Like no matter what team you're going to play against, if you're scoring 3 points in any half, it's not going to end up well for you. I think that you know this is a good Minnesota team. They haven't trailed a game since week one, but I think like with every Minnesota team, they're pretty fraudulent. That's coming from a Minnesota fan, so you can say what you want.
All right, next I want to go to the Buccaneers. They did their job. They handled the shorthand. They beat a shorthanded Eagles. They didn't have Devontae Smith or AJ Brown in that game. Needed a lot of young guys to step up. It wasn't enough. They lost 33-16. Baker Mayfield having a good game. The Bucks did what they need to, and with the Saints and the Falcons, like no, that's wrong. I can't exactly remember. I know that the Bucks now have the division lead in the NFC South, like we were all pretty much expecting to in the season. So it'll be interesting to see if they can keep that moving forward.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I was on the road most of the day. I didn't have a chance to catch this game, but I did see that after the hurricane, in the Tampa Bay area. It was great to see all the people back together in Raymond James Stadium. And I know that they did something before kickoff where they donated a bunch, the Bucks donated a bunch of money to charity and the Relief Foundation. And I would just like to say that's a great act from the Bucks and a great humanitarian act. And I just like to applaud them for that. I think that was really good, helping out the area, and they backed it up with a win, so it's worth it.
I think just looking overall as a Tampa, just as an organization, Tampa. Someone who's been there forever, Mike Evans. Great wide receiver. He's kind of he was there through the rough times. He was there when Tom Brady finally came and the Bucks won a Super Bowl. I have a question to propose to you guys. How good is Mike Evans? In a top, give me an even number preferably, top something, where would you place Mike Evans?
Personally, I would say he's just 20. I think that's the sweet spot for him. I think he broke the franchise record for points today, which con congratulations to Mike. That's a great achievement. One that maybe he'll get tattooed on his body. Who knows? Um, but congrats to him. Congrats to the Buccaneers organization. Uh, I think 20 is a perfect spot for him, honestly. He is, I believe that he is the equivalent to Keenan Allen if Keenan Allen stayed healthy. Just Mr. Reliable.
That might be one of the most accurate takes that I've never even thought of. Because just seeing that they're not exactly kind of their play type. We know play style. We know Keenan Allen. He's more slot receiver, possession, not the big plays. Mike Evans goes after big plays, uses the 6'5" frame. But for me, I think his ranking it's like probably 15, between like the 15-20 range, maybe even top 15, just because the model of consistency he has. I believe he hasn't had a single season where he's had less than 1,000 receiving yards, and he's like 31, 32 years old. And that's just, I believe he set the NFL record for most seasons with 1,000 yards. So being able to have a reliable guy that's not just going to fizzle out or have injuries, that's another big thing. He hasn't had big injuries, which, knock on wood. But it's awesome to see that someone is able to just be so consistent and be a reliable target for whatever quarterback you have, whether that is the greatest quarterback of all time, Tom Brady, to the best hype man in the NFL, Jameis Winston, and everywhere in between. It's awesome to see that a guy like that can just put up numbers just like that.
I agree with that. Nothing more.
Moving forward, the undefeated Steelers were finally handed a loss to the Colts today. Anthony Richardson left early with a hip injury, and old man Joe Flacco comes in, gets the job done. But, Justin Fields, he didn't have a particularly bad game, I don't think. But the Colts, you want to talk about shutting down the run? Najee Harris, I believe, had 13 carries for 18 yards. So
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a credit to the Colts defensive line for stuffing the run, or if it's the Steelers offensive line just having a really bad game. Either way, kudos to the Colts defense for doing well. And the Steelers were keeping it close, but ultimately the Colts were able to pull out with the win and hand Steelers their first L of the season.
Yeah. Honestly, I think Joe Flacco, he proved that he is still a competent quarterback like he did with the Browns. And I think it was last season when he came in and he salvaged their season. He did the same thing with the Jets when Zach Wilson got benched or was out. I do think Joe Flacco is considered one of the best backups in the NFL still. People do forget sometimes that he does have a ring and that he did lead a team to a ring. Um, I do believe that Anthony Richardson going out, I think it was a hamstring injury. They're taking an MRI on it. Hopefully, it's not anything season ending. Personally, this is gonna sound bad, but I hope it's season ending because I don't want to lose fantasy this year. That sounds very bad.
That
That
sound
sounds.
I think you should take
I'm
that
gonna
back.
edit
You
that out of the
you
podcast. That is you cannot wish. What the? No, stop. Okay.
I do not believe that. I don't wish that on anybody. Well, let me take a pause. I hope he gets better. I hope I said
Yeah, I hope he does. What the dude? What?
I I sent wishes to his family. I
Stop,
hope
stop, stop.
all right, let me
We're
pause.
gonna start talking about something different.
All right, my bad, guys. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said
Yeah,
that.
I
Okay.
hope Anthony Richards dies.
Okay.
That was
All
so
right.
out of
Okay.
pocket.
Let's just take a
Uh,
pause. Now the Texans getting a comeback win on the Jaguars puts the Jaguars at 0-4. A rough start to the season, and it's trickling in from last season because we saw the Jaguars had probably one of the biggest collapses of that entire season. Starting, I believe they were 8-0 by week 8, and they ended 9-8. And I think they missed the playoffs too. And now starting 0-4, that's definitely not the way you want to try and bounce back from the season, especially having a team come back on you when you have the lead. It's just demoralizing, but really kudos to CJ Stroud and the Texans for getting the job done. Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, they both had really good days. So great showing from the Texans team.
yeah, honestly, I do think this is a bounce back game for the Texans over last week against the Colts. I think Nico Collins did put an absolute masterclass up. I am sad because I benched him for Rashee Rice, who news just came in that he is feared to have a torn ACL. But I do think Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs are a very dangerous duo in the receiving room for the Texans. I will say Cam Akers, who filled in for Joe Mixon on a little bit of a short notice today. Didn't have the greatest game. I remember I think he had 13 rushes for 50 some yards. Not something spectacular, but he is a backup running back. I do think CJ Stroud, he threw for 300 plus yards and 2 touchdowns. I think that's a really good testament. People were a little bit shaky after last week's performance, but you got to remember that all great NFL teams have their hiccups and their growing moments. And I think that was last week's growing moments for the Texans, and that this is just what is expected to come for them this year.
I wish I had that bit of wisdom that Arjun does because I sat CJ Stroud this week in place of Kirk Cousins, and oh, Mr. Reliable was not very reliable today. But it's okay. I will say Jacksonville. There's not necessarily a stigma I have with Jacksonville. Just Jacksonville is a bad franchise. They've always been a bad franchise. Travis Etienne Jr. Why can't you run the ball just a little bit more? He was given 11 of the total 24 carries. I'm looking at the stats right now, and he's only able to pick up 50 yards. It's actually it's not that bad. I feel like I'm complaining a little bit too much now. I think about it. I'm gonna add this out. Who cares? Um. But I think Trevor Lawrence for the Jaguars is actually having a great season. I think again the more time we give to players to let them develop, the better they're just gonna get. And I think to the point that we made about Joe Flacco, I think the older you are, there comes with more age, comes with more wisdom. You're just gonna keep playing better for the time that you're given within the NFL, as long as you can make it last. And and I don't like the system of throwing new kids in, and we gave Trevor Lawrence, he wasn't treated very fairly. I feel like during his initial time in Jacksonville, but I think overall he's starting to get a lot better.
Now I'm going to jump over to the Kansas City Chiefs. Got the job done, winning 17-10 against the Chargers. Travis Kelce, there's been so much speculation this season about his slow start, 8 receptions for like 70 yards and 0 touchdowns on the season. He replicated that almost exactly, 9 receptions, 70 yards, no touchdowns today. Great way to bounce back and show that, being 34 years old isn't really going to, while it might slow him down a little bit, it's not going to slow him down to limit his all pro, Pro Bowl level type of play that he's had these past couple seasons. So it's great. It's great to see that, he's bringing back the type of stats that he's usually been getting.
Yeah, honestly, I think it's great for him. I think he had 7 receptions for 89 yards, which is obviously a great game, bouncing back from the 4 receptions I think he had last week. I'm not sure what really happened. I'm not sure if a flip switched, but this is great to see for him, and great for Mahomes and Mahomes fantasy owners, honestly.
Good week for Travis Kelce. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, it was a good week for Travis Kelsey. I really wish Carson Steele didn't fumble. Those .6 fantasy points aren't exactly killing it in my league right now. I'm probably about to drop to 0 and 4, so that's depressing.
He was great for his time during
Jeez.
UCLA, man. Like if you go back and watch his UCLA film, he was great. You know. Hmm.
You know what makes it even worse is seeing that you pick Rome Dunze off of waivers, he drops a filthy 2 points.
Ooh,
Then you see Chase Brown rotting on that bench with 23 points.
not that much.
And guess what? You know what the cherry on top is? I had Mike Gesicki, and he put in a .1 points, one reception, -9 yards. My fantasy team is kind of it's gonna be a long season.
Wait, Brandon, did you win this week?
Nope, I'm 0 and 4 now.
Oh, my bad, my bad.
Man, you are thriving, buddy. Ah,
All right, now bouncing away from depression, let's go on to the Commanders winning against Arizona in dominating fashion. We saw Jaden Daniels, he has translating almost the types of games he had in LSU last season to the NFL. Extremely efficient. I believe he only had 4 incompletions. He did well on the ground, almost 50 yards and a touchdown. He was efficient through the air. Just a really great showing from this Commanders team.
yeah, I couldn't say that more. I'm very impressed by Brian Robinson. He had some 20 carries for 100 some yards. Terry McLaurin caught a touchdown. Jaden Daniels did throw a pick, but didn't really prove much. Um, Going into halftime, I think it was 17-7 Commanders, and from there they kind of just caught fire and they just kept going. Jay Daniels was extremely efficient today. I remember that. Do you think? I think he was 25 for 30, 26 for 30, something like that, and 200 plus yards. Um, I do think he is the front runner for offensive rookie of the year. So I do think that's something to be happy about if you're a Commanders fan, and for if you're a Cardinals fan. Marvin Harrison Jr. caught a touchdown. So James
Hey, how
Conner,
about that?
exactly. James Conner had 100 plus yards and scored a touchdown. I mean, you can't be mad about everything. Sure, you lost by 30 some points, but at least you scored, right, guys?
Oh gosh, that's like some 8U soccer
Yeah.
team coping after losing 12-0. Now, Charlie, what were you wanting to say on that?
Well, first off, that's a great positive takeaway from Arjun right there. I mean, yeah, you're right. 28 points. It's not even that much. It's not even that much.
No.
Jeremy McNichols. I'm looking at his stats. 2 touchdowns today with 68 total yards. I think for being a running back too, that's a great stat line to put up. Brian Robinson Jr. You did point him out, Arjun, earlier. He's doing most of the heavy lifting. Uh, but I think overall, great overall ground game from the Commanders today. Just something. Maybe the ground's too hot for them, so they have to get off the field quickly in Arizona. But Jaden Daniels, he ran one in, and Brian Robinson Jr. he also ran another touchdown in. Overall, I think just a great showing from the Commanders. It's nice to see a little change of pace from that team they've been rough the past couple of years, so it's nice to see a change of pace.
All right, we're going to have our first segment of debate topics. Our name is Coastal Feuds, but these first couple episodes we haven't been feuding, but that's all going to change right here. So, the first topic, there's a lot of debate about it, but who do you think is the greatest running back of all time? Charlie, I usually always start with Arjun, but I want to go to you first this time. Who do you think is the greatest running back of all time?
Well, I like going second. It makes me feel more comfortable about making my picks because it makes me feel less. I don't know. Whatever. Um, I don't know. Jeez. Prime Adrian Peterson. Okay, and let me tell you, Minnesota is not a good franchise. As a Minnesota fan, they are not a good franchise. Okay, they have been consistently disappointments. But the fact that Adrian Peterson could come in and change that around, like it's basically one player. He took the Vikings to multiple playoff appearances. I think so. I really hope so. Um, I'm gonna have to edit that part out. Adrian Peterson changed the Vikings so incredibly. I don't think anyone else can do it. I think if he put on a better team, he would have won a Super Bowl.
Personally, it's Emmitt Smith. I'm not saying that because I'm a biased Cowboys fan or whatever you want to call it, but he has the most career rushing yards of all time.
All
Actually,
right.
wait, hold on, wait. May I make a point? I actually think the greatest running back of all time would have been the one, the only Marcus Dupree. But much like my dad and every other dad of all time, if he didn't bust his knee, he would have been greatest running back in the NFL. But it's such a shame. Okay, Marcus Dupree. Go watch his 30 for 30. Great 30 for 30.
Okay.
You could have said a player at your high school, and I wouldn't have
Yep.
known the difference.
Yep.
All
Marcus
right.
Dupree, go watch that 30 for 30. Legendary
Hey,
Oklahoma running
Charlie,
back.
Charlie. If I hadn't broken my pinky, I would have been in the MLB by now.
That's
Yeah,
a great point.
if I hadn't torn every single ligament possible and bone in my knee,
If
I
you
would be a
watch
Hall
his
of
high
Famer.
school film, if you watch his college film, he's actually one of the best running backs you will ever watch. He's so technically gifted. He literally carried that Oklahoma team, okay? Like they didn't need to run the wishbone around him. They literally could run whatever they wanted to with Marcus Dupree. Such a good running back, okay? Get your ball knowledge up.
Well, speaking of really good Oklahoma running backs, I think the greatest running back of all time is not from Oklahoma, but from Oklahoma State. Give me Barry Sanders. Shiftiest running back ever. His highlight reel is insane. It's video game like. You can't even recreate that stuff in video games. The type of stuff he did, the run he had against Dallas, where he had 10 grown men, some of the best athletes on the planet, dive into air like there's a leaf pile there and they're scoring a touchdown, just embarrassing them. It's awesome to see what he did, but it was disappointing to see that he cut his career short, but if you've watched the Bye Bye Barry documentary, you'll see why he did cut his career short. It's on Prime Video. Great documentary. I loved it, but the one thing I have to say about Emmitt Smith is you could always bring up, yeah, he has the most career rushing yards. Do you know what he also had? He had a Hall of
Yep.
Fame line. He
Yep.
had
Yep.
Larry
Yep.
Allen, possibly one of the greatest linemen of all time. Do you know who Barry Sanders had? He had a cycling rotation of coaches, quarterbacks, offensive linemen. I mean, the only really good offensive player I can think of off the Lions that was on Barry Sanders' team was Herman Moore, and that's really it. And Charlie, you want to talk about Adrian Peterson putting a team on his back? You want to talk about Barry Sanders putting a team on his back? He took a bunch of nobodies, a bunch of draft busts, and just like I just said, nobodies. He took them to the playoffs, and they beat the Cowboys, who had Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith, Michael Irvin, a star-studded team against a team that could have gone, probably would be like semi-pro. They would maybe win it like an XFL championship if Barry Sanders wasn't there. But the fact that he just carried this team and like all the amazing runs he had, all the touchdowns. If he kept on going for as many seasons as Emmitt Smith did, Barry Sanders would be the leading rusher of all time and indisputably the greatest running back of all time.
You see, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with Barry Sanders and I'm fine with Emmitt Smith. I feel like those two are the biggest ones that are up for debate. I understand the Barry argument, and in some ways, I agree with it. He did not have the same conditions Emmitt Smith had. That Emmitt Smith was able to have such a long career and inevitably go to the Cardinals even for 2 extra years. Even though nobody talks about that, that helped his rushing yards, right? People don't talk about the ability of Larry Allen and the whole star-studded offensive line that was able to help Emmitt Smith's longevity of his career.
All right, and moving on, it's a little bit weird. I mean, it's actually, I think it's a good one. Who do you think was a better player in their prime, Luke, or like who had a bigger impact? Because it's two sides of the ball. They both had not as long seasons. Luke Kuechly or Calvin Johnson.
Say it one more time.
Oh man.
So who do you think So we both know the two players I just mentioned, Calvin Johnson
Mhm.
and Luke Kuechly, really good players, but they had their careers cut short due to injuries. While they are, Calvin Johnson is a Hall of Famer, Luke Kuechly should be a Hall of Famer. Who do you think had a bigger impact or just was like a better player on their side of the ball during their time? Luke Kuechly on defense or Calvin Johnson on offense?
Okay, there's two answers to this, and you have to listen to me very clearly. Luke Kuechly is insanely underrated. I will continue to say this. Him being, I'm not sure if he's eligible for the Hall yet. He should be. He should be eligible for the Hall of Fame at this point.
I I think so.
It's honestly, he should be getting in the next 2 years or so. But Calvin Johnson held a he does he still hold the receiving touchdowns? And he did it in 16
No,
games, which
it's
is
receiving yards, not
oh
touchdowns.
wait, receiving yards? Is it receiving? Yeah, receiving yards. It's receiving yards, and he did it in 16 games, which is one less that everybody now has. That everybody has 17 games now. Calvin Johnson had 16. He had an insane impact. The connection between him and Matt Stafford was electric. You know where the ball was going. There's clips where two people, maybe even three, lined up with Calvin Johnson, and the ball still would be thrown to him. Would he come down with it? Maybe, maybe not. Would it be a distraction with three men being on one guy? That means there's going to be mismatches, right? He created mismatches for others by just being himself. He, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the Madden thing, double me, where
I am
it's an
quite familiar with
automatic
it.
yes with double me. He resembles double me. You have to double cover him on basically every play because that's how big of a threat he is. Luke Kuechly, on the other hand, was insane. He was a very hard hitter. He was a very good leader. He was a very good pass cover. He wasn't very good. He was a good run stopper and good in pass coverage. He was good in everything. But I do believe that Megatron was more impactful on his side of the ball.
Yeah, I don't think Luke Kuechly is nearly as impactful as Megatron. You got the Matt Stafford and Calvin Johnson connection is one of the best wide receiver quarterback duos, in my opinion, of all time. Like, Calvin Johnson didn't even play out his full career, and he was still placed in the NFL. And almost immediately after he placed in the Hall of Fame almost immediately after his eligibility was available, after he was available to go into the Hall of Fame. Like, when I think of great wide receiver quarterback duos, I think Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, uh, Tom Brady, Randy Moss, Tom Brady, Gronk, Tom Brady, Julian Edelman. Tom Brady had a lot of great connections. I think Calvin Johnson and Matt Stafford was so impactful for the Lions that they actually had quality seasons. I felt like of football. You didn't see that for such a long time between when Calvin Johnson got hurt and then between now basically. I think yeah, Calvin Johnson 100%.
Well, I do hear you guys' thing. I think it is really close, but just to be a devil's advocate, I do think Luke Kuechly, just the impact he had that on that 2015 Panthers Super Bowl run, while they ultimately did not get it done, he led and anchors that defense. And when you watch his highlight tapes and just the amount of studying he does, Tony Dungy compared him to like Peyton Manning, the amount of preparation he puts in, and he just knows what the offense is doing. He'll make line shifts, he'll be calling out, communicating to everyone what's happening because he knows what's going to happen. When I was younger, I would see Luke Kuechly highlights, and he'd be at the linebacker and they would run a stretch, and he would step in that same direction at the same time that the offensive lineman would. And I would always think that it's just amazing to see a guy like that just already know where the ball's going. Like he took the step faster than the offense did. He's not even supposed to know the play, and yet he does. And just the leadership that he had to bring in one of the newest franchise in the NFL, bring them up to that peak. They ultimately did lose, but I just think that his impact for like the entire Panthers organization was also really impactful. It was him and Sam Mills are two of like the greatest Panthers in that organization's history. Next up, I want to bring it to the defensive side of the ball. Who do you got? They all played in the same timeline, but who do you think was the best safety? Brian Dawkins, Troy Polamalu, or Ed Reed?
Oh my God. Um. Wow. College, Ed Reed. NFL. Oh my God. I don't think I can even choose. Honestly, that is so crazy. I know for a fact that college is Ed Reed. In the NFL, I think it might just be Brian Dawkins and what he did in such a short time frame. Honestly. I know Troy Polamalu won a chip. I know Ed Reed won a chip. I know all these people won, but Brian Dawkins' life was tragically cut short. But in that time frame, he was a very, very good player. He was, and he enlisted fear in others. He was a hard hitter. I know he was an Eagle, and I'm a Cowboys fan, but I do think at that time period, he was the most feared player in the NFL.
I just want to ask, you said his life was tragically cut short. Is he dead?
Am I thinking of Sean Taylor?
I think you're thinking of Sean Taylor. No, because
All right, hold on.
he played for like 14 seasons. Like he had a pretty long
Yeah, I was
career.
gonna say I don't
Okay.
think this is the right
All right,
person.
hold on. Then this was a casual moment for me. Then I'm going Troy Polamalu. I genuinely thought we were talking about Sean Taylor for a second. Oh my God. Apologies for anybody who's watching this. Please don't call me a casual. Please. It was a slip up. But Troy
That's our next
Polamalu.
debate topic. Is Arjun a casual?
There we go.
We're
There we
going
go.
definitely positive
We're
on
just gonna have to
that.
start randomly naming NFL players, some random role players.
Who was
Who
the
get
left tackle on the 1958 Broncos defensive scout team?
false?
Exactly.
The Broncos weren't alive in 1958. Let's just do immaculate grids
Boom.
and see who gets the lowest score. But now, Charlie, who do you
Go
think
with
it
me.
is of the three?
Well, I mean, that's not fair to my Troy Polamalu answer. Yeah, it's 100% Troy Polamalu. I think his ability to hit, his ability to cover, and his hair. I think that's all you really need. No, the first two things, I'm so for real. I think he, again, super hard hitter in my opinion. Definitely was able to cover the ball like nobody's business. Like, if we're bringing Madden references into this, ball hawk, okay? There was a no-fly zone with Mr. Palomalu, okay? He was hounding, I felt like he hounded, he hounded wide receivers. He hounded anywhere where the ball was going. Of those three, 100% Troy Polamalu. And he won a chip to show for it.
Now, personally, I'm gonna go with Brian Dawkins. I know that Arjun was thinking of Sean Taylor, but if you just think about not only the play that he had, but his tunnel entrances, the way that he would be possessed by this otherworldly demon on game day, and he would turn into, oh shoot, I think it was X Factor.
Yep.
Yeah, he would just turn into Weapon X. Just it would be insane. I apologize for X Factor. It's a different Chiefs receiver, but just the fear that he struck with that tinted visor, man, you did not want to go within 5 feet of Brian Dawkins. And it wasn't just the interceptions he had and the tackles and the hard hits he had. I mean, if you look at some of his hits, they are hard. They strike fear. But he also was so good at sacking quarterbacks. I believe I saw a stat. He might have been like, he has over like, I think he leads safeties in sacks over an entire career. And it's a pretty good number. It might be like 30 sacks. And it's just insane to see like his impact, that when you go to sleep at night and you're playing the Eagles, Brian Dawkins is going to come across in your nightmares. And that's just something. And he was a great ball hawk. Ed Reed, the best ball hawk player of all time, leads the career in interception return yards and touchdowns. But I just think overall, I think Brian Dawkins, just with the fear he struck, his coverage, his tackling, his hitting, and his ability to get after quarterback makes him the greatest safety of all time. And now I want to go with one that Charlie he recommended I should do. It's the greatest commentary call. And I'm not sure if we want to do it if we want to do like football, NFL, or just all time, any sport. I can't really do you guys have any that you can just think of off the top of your head that were just very, very good?
Honestly, that is such a hard thing to just come up off the top of your head. I feel like there's a couple that are just kind of iconic you could think of, but honestly, I don't really think of anything just off the top of my head. Um,
I think for me, it has to be when Tyler Lombardi mistakenly called a home run when commentating the Syracuse Mets. He calls
oh,
Oh,
it, it's gone.
that was possibly the greatest whip of all time from our fellow
it's
co-host.
going, and it's gone. Excuse me, that was a foul ball.
Exactly.
No, I think it like ended up like the center fielder's glove or something like that, and he
Uh,
was so confused. He's like, it's gone. Yeah, put no gusto into it. No, for real though. I think one of the best commentary calls of all time. Steph Curry walking down the court. Uh, Warriors, they need to hit the shot. OKC, this is like against OKC. This is like prime. We all know the play that I'm
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about.
mhm.
Curry, way downtown. I mean, Bang is one of the most legendary calls. I forget who called it. I know. Call me a
Mike
cat.
Breen.
Yep.
Mike
Mike
Breen.
Breen.
Yes, of course.
Legend.
I'm sorry.
Shout
Mike
out
Breen.
Mike Breen. Love you, man.
His bang call is so iconic, and somehow this Curry one is by far the best. I think undisputed. You can feel it. You can feel it's amazing.
So the one that I have three that come off the top of my head. I'm gonna start with, since we've been talking football, I'll go with football. Joe Buck, Troy Aikman, Vikings versus Saints, NFC divisional. Stephon Diggs, game-winning touchdown. Joe Buck, I think he did a very good job of doing that. He wasn't talking a whole lot. For Diggs, touchdown, unbelievable. It's just he did a really good job of feeding into the crowd and letting the crowd speak for itself, which is something that commentators sometimes don't always take into account, that, crowds can also you can just let the noise echo and let that simmer and marinate for the viewer. And then for my two basketball ones, the Kawhi Leonard from the corner spin around jumper on Joel Embiid, Kevin Harlan. Is this the dagger? And then the pause, you could just imagine the slow-mo of it bouncing out on top of the rim, hitting against the backboard. And then finally, it's another Mike Breen one. It was when the Heat were playing the Spurs in a playoff game, and it was a feed back out to Allen. Bang! And the Heat tie it up. I mean, that's just any pretty much any playoff Mike Breen call is just going to be something amazing.
Yeah, I finally came up with one. This is one that I feel like gets overshadowed a lot, but it was I believe, 2017 National Championship. Tua gets subbed in for Jalen Hurts. It's overtime against Georgia, and he unloads an absolute bomb to Devontae Smith. And I forget who was commentating the game, but that commentating was electric. You could tell that in the air, one of the commentators just went, "Oh my God." And as soon as he finished, the ball was caught in the end zone, and everybody was going crazy. And the commentators were speechless. They were using silence as if it was a virtue. They were using it to their advantage. They weren't talking a whole lot. You could hear the crowd rumbling. And then all of a sudden, he just goes, Tua Tagovailoa won Alabama the national championship. And even though it's so simple, I think it is one of the best calls in college football.
And transitioning with calls, I want to jump to announcers for college football. While we know about these two options, so I want to mention Gus Johnson and Joel Klatt, or Brad Nessler and Gary Danielson. Brad Nessler and Gary Danielson, they've been doing SEC games for 20 some years. Felt like every time I turned on an Alabama or a Georgia game, LSU, just any SEC team, I would always hear those guys talking. And, it just brings back some like nostalgia. But then you have Gus Johnson, his iconic calls, he's got a great growl when he announces, which, so many people don't really have. So what are you guys' opinions? A better duo, Gus Johnson and Joel Klatt, or Brad Nessler and Gary Danielson?
Personally, I do think it's Joel Klatt and Gus Johnson, not just because of the recency bias or because that's who I'm more familiar with, but because of the personality that those two have. Like you said, Gus Johnson has that growl to him when he's calling a game. He creates nicknames for people on the fly. Like the past year for Marvin Harrison Jr., it was Maserati Marv, right? He has this personality, this swagger to him, you may say, in a way that he calls games, and some will call it an unorthodox way, where he puts super big emphasis on super big plays, and he's screaming in the commentator booth, and he gets super into it, and he puts a lot of personality into it, and he puts himself, and he puts his personality, like I said, just front and center. And I think Joel Klatt is more of a mellow commentator, so they kind of balance each other out. And Joe Klatt I think, is extremely underrated in the college football commentary world, in the likes of Kirk Herbstreit and Chris Fowler and the ESPN crew. I do think that Gus Johnson and Joe Klatt are better than those other two.
I 100% agree with that. I think Gus Johnson. I think he provides just such character to the game. He makes it feel like it's such like he makes it feel like it's more than football. He makes it feel like it's reality TV, or he makes it feel just like he makes it feel different, in my opinion. He adds so much to the game that I just don't feel like uh, anyone else can really add. And then I like your point of Joel Klatt, how they complement each other well. Joel Klatt, he acts a little bit more mellow, especially during those big plays, and he provides that great analysis. Um, but I think overall, yeah, those two are just they work so well together, and I think it's great, so fun to listen to.
All right. And I think the final one that I want to go off of is theoretically, if we're thinking about it, Saquon Barkley and Christian McCaffrey at the end of their respective careers, who is better?
Okay,
Who won a
honestly,
Rose Bowl?
this.
Who won a Rose Bowl?
Wait, are we talking about college careers
No, we are
or?
talking about NFL at the end of their
Oh, just
NFL.
NFL. Oh, just NFL. Oh, then never mind.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, shoot.
Then I would say, okay, it depends on who wins more championships, honestly.
If you think about the team that they are on and the path that is expected for them, when it's all said and done and they hang up the cleats, who do you think more people would agree would have a better career, Christian McCaffrey or Saquon Barkley?
Okay, I'm gonna say it, Saquon Barkley. Um, I do believe it's because he's just, oh my God, I don't even know how I can back this up. It's just kind of like this gut feeling I have. There's really no evidence I can really put to it. They're two just really, really good players, and it's hard to really say anything. They've both been injury prone their careers. They both are now on great teams with great offensive lines and Super Bowl aspirations. This season, Saquon Barkley is possibly the best fantasy player and best running back without a doubt in the National Football League. Christian McCaffrey has been injured. Um, but oh man, overall careers, I feel if Saquon Barkley stays with the Philadelphia Eagles and the Philadelphia Eagles continue to have a good O line and a good quarterback and a good competent team around him, that Saquon will be a better team at the end of his career and hopefully wins a championship.
I think from right now, if they both retired right now, I think yeah, probably Saquon has had a better career in total. Like you said, they both have had a little bit of injury trouble in the past. I think Christian McCaffrey has been much worse than
Yeah.
Saquon's in general. Um, and I think that with more time to just simply play, Saquon's had a lot. Both of them didn't have exactly stellar teams to play with from their rookie years, but Christian McCaffrey I feel like he's now on a team that is gonna lead them somewhere, and got them to a Super Bowl last year. If he didn't have to go to Germany and get surgery this year, then he again I feel like he'd probably be delivering MVP style numbers. So has Saquon won an MVP yet?
M M MVP, like most valuable player, or like offensive player of the year?
MVP.
Yeah, has Christian McCaffrey won an MVP?
Yes,
Oh, oh, oh.
he won it last year.
That was Lamar Jackson, buddy. He won Offensive Player of the Year. Lamar Jackson won MVP. I'm surrounded by casuals. What is going on?
I am in shambles right now. That is not as bad as the Sean Taylor one, audience. All right, but in the comments,
Editing
which
this
one
part
is
out.
worse?
Wait.
No,
No.
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 Are you trolling or are you being serious?
Lamar Jackson won MVP last year.
I pray you're trolling, Trev.
All right.
Oh my lord!
We all have our moments where, like we all have our sports moments where we just think stuff. We've all had our moments when we're coming back from school and we forget how to spell a word after a long summer. It's all right. We we all have our hiccups. We all have our struggles.
That's Brent, that word one sounds like just you, buddy. I know how to spell just fine. I got
You've never had that happen before?
no, because I'm not like illiterate. I still speak over the summer. I still use my vocabulary.
All right. Well, anyway, my opinion is I do think it will be Saquon Barkley because oh, Charlie, are you Charlie? You doing all right, bud?
He is in such shambles. Oh my god.
Oh my god. I said Christian McCaffrey won the MVP last year. Dude.
An audience, if you don't already know this, what makes this funnier is that Charlie is a 49ers fan. So he follows the team and still thinks Christian McCaffrey won MVP.
Yeah, the reigning MVP is injured and is going to Berlin to get some knee surgery. Oh, buddy, it's okay.
It's all right. He looks like he just saw a ghost. I don't know what's going on. But anyway,
this is arguably the worst moment of my life.
Oh, if this is your worst moment of your life, you've had a great life, man.
yeah, bro, I want to
worst
be
moment of my
you.
life.
Yeah, this is.
Well,
This
no.
is
So this
stellar.
is like on top, like living through living through a tornado in Minnesota, having like hide in the cellar. This is like on par with that. Yeah.
Bro, I experienced that like every other 4 weeks, bro. Like
Oh yeah, he lives in the Midwest,
no biggie.
Iowa,
Iowa.
Yeah,
Cyclones.
Gotta
big
represent.
country.
Big country.
Oh man.
Okay. Wait, can I finish my argument if I didn't?
Yeah,
make
go
it?
ahead.
Yeah, just don't
Okay.
say MVP.
I think, right now, yeah, sure. Saquon probably has had a better career. Saquon will not deliver the Eagles to a Super Bowl anytime soon. Christian McCaffrey will deliver the Niners to multiple Super Bowls in the upcoming years. Hopefully they'll win one. I don't think they're probably going to win one. I'm going to be real with you. They're probably going to choke them all. But Christian McCaffrey is simply the better player. He is more shifty. He has a just much better overall running back. He has a much better overall running back type of play, to be honest. I feel like Saquon, he doesn't have that kind of juice. I feel like he should have been able to do at least something with the time he had during the Giants. He didn't really do anything. Christian McCaffrey had no time with the Panthers.
So the way that I want to think of it is, yes, while Christian McCaffrey has had a lot of success, only the second running back in NFL history, along with 49ers, Roger Craig, to have 1,000-yard rushing and 1,000-yard receiving in the same season. I do think Saquon Barkley, it's a little comparable to if Barry Sanders went to a good team. Because we know about Saquon Barkley, his explosiveness, Quadzilla, His legs are huge. He has such great lower body strength and overall shiftiness. We saw him like average like 7 hurdles a game against other teams. We just know that he's so athletic and just has such a strong body that he's able to break tackles and still be shifty at the same time. When it's all said and done, if Saquon can still have a good offensive line, I do think he will be the better running back for years to come, despite some injury concerns he's had over the past couple seasons. And that's something that Christian McCaffrey's also suffered with too, and is currently suffering with his Achilles tendonitis currently right now. That's going to be all for another episode of the Coastal Feuds podcast. We're very lucky for you guys to have joined us. I'm Braden Plort. I'm alongside me, Arjun Pirani and Charlie Van Dyke. Close out another episode. Make sure to follow us on social media, on Instagram and on Twitter at Coastal Feuds. We're not hard to find. Make sure to keep tuning in for the upcoming weeks, and we'll see you guys next time.